let's kick it off while we got people joining us, and talk a little bit about why we're here. So, for those of you who don't know, we launched 1Password 8 for Windows today, and it was a pretty exciting day. I tweeted about it a little bit early this morning, and it was both scary and awesome to know that like the very, very first proof of concept of this new app was a total of 683 calendar days ago, and today we just launched the Windows version of it. And so with all the things that has happened in the last almost 2 years, COVID and our company just expanding our engineering teams, reorganizing, hiring C-level folks, it's just been a heck of a wild ride. So it was definitely a really big day of reflection for me. And so it's been a really exciting day. It's really exciting to see the community get excited, especially around an awesome looking Windows app, which I would argue 1Password 8 definitely fits that bill now, which is freaking awesome. So Mitch, do you want to start us off a little bit with the history of the Windows app?
Yeah, well, it's a funny kind of story because we actually, although this is a launch day, we actually announced this new Windows app several months ago. We had our first ever early access, which is an idea we got from gaming, which is kind of close to our hearts. And we had a lot of interest then, and we actually didn't know when we were going to release it. And what we would do is every few weeks we would ask Mike, who has been on our Windows team for years, as long as I've been here, and he's sort of the expert on all things Windows and all things 1Password for Windows. And every few weeks we'd ask him, Mike, is this ready to go yet? And he would sort of say, no, it's not ready. And then one day he said, yeah, what are you waiting for? Like, why isn't it already out? So that's when we knew we had to plan an official release date and go from the early access to the 1Password 8 stable. Because if it's good enough for Mike, it's definitely good enough for the world. And Mike's history here goes back sort of to the early Windows team we had, which really pioneered some of the work that, believe it or not, is still in 1Password for Windows and our other Windows apps today. And our other 1Password apps today. So although we have rewritten our apps from scratch over the past couple of years, some of the foundational work began in our Windows app on Windows. So if you've used 1Password 7 for Windows, you've used some of the earliest Rust code that we wrote at 1Password. The Windows team sort of introduced the Rust programming language to the company, got us excited about it. Sergey taught us the basics of what we knew about Rust in person and sort of hooked us on why it's such a great language. And actually, the very first prototype that we built, or one of the very first prototypes that we built for the new app, took some of that foundational code from the previous Windows app and just started building on it. So when we rebuilt our app from scratch, and that's what you're getting in the new 1Password for Windows, but we actually took bits and pieces of what we had before as some of the foundation. Because, one of the things you realize every time you rewrite an app is, I shouldn't have just done it from scratch. Like, we're throwing out a lot of good work. And I'm glad to say that I think we found a good balance this time. A lot of stuff that you see in 1Password 8 for Windows comes from our previous Windows app, comes from our 1Password browser extension, even from the Mac app and from the Linux app. So sort of we're combining all these lessons into building, honestly, a better experience than we've ever had on Windows and on any platform before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I really liked what Rue here tweeted this morning, where even further back history, he has a screenshot up above there that is essentially the very first version of 1Password for Windows that we launched, I think about 11 years ago, give or take, and kind of what it looks like today. What are your thoughts, Rue? I know this is kind of a pretty big moment for you. I know you weren't really involved in Windows in the early days, but now you kind of own all of these desktop apps and the folks working on it.
Yeah, it's a big day. Like I'm super excited. you're right. So when I joined the company, I was doing iOS development, and then eventually ended up running the iOS and the Apple teams, and then a couple of years ago moved up, and now I'm running Mac and Windows and Linux and iOS and Android across all the across the entire org. And when we started this project, basically filed new project on all of our apps in order to build what is 1Password 8. It was scary. Like I went back and read my first post today where it was like, all right, everyone, like this is what we're doing, like this is what we're kicking off. And it's awesome to be here now and sort of look back at where this all started and say like, yeah, we've delivered something really great. And it, to the point of like, when was it ready? And talking about like, who when did we think this was actually good to get out in people's hands and call it the stable release? The other day, Dave was taking the launch team through his blog post and just hitting feature after feature after feature, and just like, oh, and we changed this and we improved this and we built this. And knowing what our Windows customers were using that day in 1Password 7 and seeing what they were going to be using, a week and a half later, I was like, this is such an awesome upgrade. This is such an awesome thing to be able to deliver to this community. And I'm very proud of the team. I'm very proud of the app, and I'm just super stoked.
Yeah, for sure. I think the reason why I think today is very exciting is because when we released the Linux app, we were going from nothing to something. Zero regressions. Everything was new. Essentially, it was very easy to say, hey, this is a win. There was no 1Password desktop client unless you were running Wine and Dream, right? Windows is, and as we kind of start gathering this initial reaction and start hearing feedback, is the first of this new class of apps where we've made intentional decisions to remove some features, to change some design language. And so like today is the first day of like a real 1Password client replacing an old 1Password client. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm super excited. The other thing I was reflecting on that was pretty awesome to see is the time between when we launched the Linux app and the Windows app. Not only did we essentially get this Windows app ready, which has a whole suite of Windows-specific features that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but along that whole process, we got to see Linux kind of level up right alongside it, which is really exciting. And the Mac early access get better as well. So like our dream of building what we call this core team and building apps that essentially deliver features in unison is actually being proven out. And you can witness it today in public, which is super, super exciting, at least for me. When I mentioned 687 days, 683 days since when we started this project, that is the longest version of that timeline that exists. That was like 683 days ago. There were a couple of us at the end of a conference where we actually got real work done. And we were like, hey, what's stopping us from essentially building a cross-platform app to replace our desktop apps? And we built a very tiny proof of concept that involved a lot of throwaway code and built surprisingly completely off of our 1Password CLI tool that you can download and use in your terminal today to essentially drive this full front end. And like that's where we realized the possibility. And then, we had to go into the process of actually convincing the company that this was the correct approach, hiring a team of folks to build the vision, right? Like we could not have done this 2 years ago to this magnitude. And so there was a lot that kind of went behind that. So with that in mind, I know, Rue, you've told this story like 900 times across different interviews, but do you want to quickly rehash like what the core project is here at 1Password and essentially what that does for us?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite stories to tell. I will try and do the short version of it. So if you look back at how the 1Password apps have been built throughout our history, the 16 plus year history of 1Password now, we've always had replicated tech stacks across the board. So if we wanted a Windows app, we built a Windows app, and it was its own thing. It didn't share any code with any other apps or anything else. If we wanted an Android app, we built an Android app, and that was its own thing. And so, fast forward to a few years ago, and we've got a Mac and an iOS app that share some of the code in the back end. We've got an Android app that's its own thing. We've got the Windows app that's its own thing. We've got our web app that's its own thing, but does share a little bit of code with the browser extension. But then, of course, we got the browser extension, which has a lot of its own thing. And so we ended up in this position where we had so many different implementations of 1Password across the board that it was difficult to maintain things as we wanted to roll out new features. Both, 1Password.com features or just features across the board. And so we said, this would be a lot easier if we had just one shared implementation of 1Password. Like if there was one version of 1Password, and then we built thin user interface wrappers on top of it for each of our platforms. And so that is what the 1Password core is today. It's a headless 1Password app. It encapsulates all the logic that everything that it means to be a 1Password app is in the 1Password core. It talks to the server. It handles database communications. It handles all of our cryptography, permissions enforcement. Everything goes through the core. And then on top of it, we've built this next generation of 1Password apps that are thin, like I said, thin user interface wrappers. And so this 1Password for Windows app is our second such stable release of our core apps. We've got 3 to go, and it's really cool because one of the things that I've seen happen again and again and again is as we're making changes and we're making improvements to the internals of 1Password, to the 1Password core, we're rolling those changes out across all of our platforms. Every platform gets those changes, whether we're fixing how search works, we're making it faster. We're adding new features like our item sharing feature. Like these features they get rolled out to all of our clients. And the delta between wanting to do something and having it in our customers' hands is so much smaller than it's ever been. And so it's a huge endeavor. It's not the reason that I'm bald, but it's certainly one of the reasons my hair is not coming back anytime soon. But it's really fun. It's really cool. And like I said, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, thank you. Mitch, do you have anything to add to that from like the product perspective? Because I mean, engineering is one thing, but in the end of the day, a lot of people just want 1Password to work where they use it and have a similar experience. So how do you look at it, this core project?
So I actually am reflecting on it more lately from sort of an internal perspective. I think what you end up seeing in the product reflects sort of a philosophical change that's happened internally, where we used to be a company of silos, of sort of very sort of like platform focused kind of work. And now, I mean, certainly for myself, I've always switched between Macs and PCs and Linux, but I now, I'm productive in all 3 every day. I have dev environments and testing environments and just work environments ready to go. And I'm constantly testing our product on every computer and device I can think of, and searching out more that I wouldn't have thought to use in the past, and getting comfortable with different kinds of workflows, because I'm really trying to put myself in the mindset of everyone possibly using our product, and not just myself and like the 1 or 2 workflows that I'm really comfortable with. And I think that's what people will see reflected, certainly in this new Windows app. Like it's obvious that people have tried it on Windows before and thought about how it fits in with the system and would fit into Windows workflows. And that's true. And it's not just the traditional sort of Windows team, but everyone. We tell everyone, like, go test it on Windows, make sure that it makes sense on Windows, that the language is correct, that the visual design is correct. And certainly we find out as soon as we can when things are off, and have time to sort of get ahead of that. So by the time we're ready for release, we had a lot of practical experience with making the best 1Password experience on Windows. And really what you'll see, and one of the reasons we're doing staged releases for these apps is so we can really make sure we have that on all platforms.
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you, I've been using 1Password for, I think, a little over 15 years or now. The time kind of, I don't know. I think I've lost a year or two here and there. But I've always been a user of the 1Password Windows app. I remember when it came out because that was one of the places that I've always had a Windows machine, even though I've primarily been a Mac and Linux user over the years. Because you got to play games, right? Like, how do you play video games if you're not a PC gamer? I mean, what are you doing, right? And so back in the good old days, we used to have this thing called 1Password Anywhere, and you would be able to basically install Dropbox and essentially access your passwords on Windows. And I got to dig back through. It was right around the same time that kind of came out and the Windows app first launched. And that was a big kind of day for me as a 1Password user to essentially be able to use 1Password on Windows and be able to up my security game on my video games, which these days have only become more and more important to protect. You know what I mean? Like, skins in Counter-Strike can be worth thousands of dollars. There's even games that are just built off of NFT trading with potential tax implications. But I know you're a gamer, Mitch. Like, where do you see Windows in your sphere these days?
So it's funny, for the longest time, my relationship with Windows was primarily gaming and other sort of hobbies. Like, I used Windows for fun. I built PCs for fun. But, when I sat down to work, it was on a MacBook, as a lot of my generation sort of in the around 2010, like that was the thing you did. And I think this new focus on making sure that we have a great productivity experience on Windows coincides with almost like a rebirth of the productivity community among Windows users. And I've noticed myself, Microsoft has done an incredible job on outreach there, sort of giving me the tools. Like, at first I noticed it on Mac OS. Suddenly I was running all sorts of Microsoft software on my Mac and loving it, like VS Code and later Edge and then Azure. And you go and then you check out Windows and you've got all these tools are there, and you have things like WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, which really allows you to get up and running with your dev workflow. And, productivity features of Windows that I actually came to appreciate for work, like Arrow Snap, being able to tile windows. And I just got really into it, and I started really appreciating Windows as a productivity platform. And I've increasingly started using it and enjoying it. And that's sort of, a lot of things have come together. Like, I don't know about you all, but during the pandemic, one of the only fun things to do was to build PCs. So, I built a nice new one, really got into using a workstation as my computer. There wasn't much of a reason to sit at a laptop when you're trapped at your desk. And I really enjoyed that kind of workflow and that lifestyle. And then, Windows 11 just came out. And man, I know lots of people have opinions about it, but it's beautiful, it's slick, it's fast, and I'm really enjoying getting my work done on Windows, and frankly using 1Password on Windows. So the timing's just great, and I'm so glad in particular that we're able to release so close to Windows 11. I think people setting up a new PC with a new operating system, now is the time to check out 1Password if you haven't thought of using it before. Certainly if you haven't thought of using it before on Windows.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me personally, having Edge be Chromium based has been one of the most significant changes to make our life easier as developers too. So, a lot of people use 1Password in the browser. When Edge started embracing web extensions, just like everyone else, they were kind of building the APIs how they see fit. And when we got to transition over to what we were calling Edgium at the time, but the new Microsoft Edge that's all Chromium based, like, what a heck of a relief and an easy experience it has been for, 1Password to be able to publish the same exact extension that we're now using in every major browser. So it's the same extension you're going to be using in Safari. It's the same extension you see on Firefox. It's the same in all of Chromium-based browsers. I did not know this until today, but I've heard a rumor that Rue has never owned a Windows PC. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah. That is, yeah, it's actually correct. I mean, I've certainly installed Windows. I've certainly used Windows, but I've never I've never called a Windows PC my daily driver. Yeah.
So now with the M1 Max, you won't even have boot camp anymore. It's like you kind of don't even get to experience Windows. But I think that almost summarizes how awesome our new kind of cross-platform development and design philosophy is, right? Like you have visibility on an app that is running on Windows without even having to really use Windows, which is really cool.
I mean, yeah, the shared everything nature of this app means that there's a high degree of if I'm seeing it on Mac OS, that we're seeing it on Windows as well, which is great. Like it certainly helps that, but that's no replacement for actually running the app on the platform where it's deployed. And happily, we've got a huge number of people at the company who run Windows on a daily basis and love the operating system and are quick to call out when things aren't quite right and when we need to put a little bit of extra love and focus on our app on that platform.
Yeah, for sure. And so with that in mind, one of the really cool things about these 1Password apps, 1Password 8 coming out cross-platform, is the fact that I think we are crossing the boundary of what you can expect with a cross-platform app, right? So people were, I would say, enthused by our fact that we supported biometric unlock on Linux in the very first version of 1Password for Linux. And we even support, watch unlock on Mac OS. But, Windows, just like every operating system, has its own suite of kind of platform-specific niceties, APIs, and those kind of things. And Mitch, can you give us like a quick rundown of what we're doing on 1Password 8 for Windows that you won't find on the other desktop apps, even though they look and feel exactly the same?
Yeah, first I just want to say I see a handful of people making requests to speak, and that's great. You can go ahead and do that if you want. We are going to invite people in for one or two pauses to answer some questions and to discuss. So don't feel bad if you don't see anyone handling your request right away. But just so you know, we will open up the floor because, of course, we definitely want to talk to everyone. So we have a philosophy, and it kind of emerged organically, where for the most part, we build out the desktop app to kind of be the 1Password experience that we have in mind. And then when we find some feature of a device or an operating system or even an individual workflow that we think can enhance it and customize it and for that person on that platform, we embrace it. And you will see a number of those touch points in the Windows app and certainly more of them as time goes on. We actually have some planned that aren't even in this first version of the new app, but we'll be there soon and in the months to come. So it even starts with how it looks. So you actually look at the Windows app and you're going to see that it has a very deliberate Windows 11 sort of modern style unified design where the Chrome of the app, the title and the toolbar blend into the operating system in a way that is reminiscent of Microsoft's own design style, which we cautiously tried to match. It's not exact, but we want it to be obviously an app that was intentionally designed to look good on a Windows desktop, and also, of course, to integrate well with your window management, because Windows management on Windows is different from on Mac OS. You have tiling features that you don't have on Mac. Of course, you have the buttons on the right side instead of the left side, and you also have certain sort of treatment of menus and shortcuts that are just different. And we took all those into account. So we think you'll appreciate both the visual design as well as the actual layout of the Windows app. And of course, it has the rounded corners, and Windows 11 just sort of blends in really well. And we actually have some more design tweaks that we want to make. One of them that I'm very excited about is sort of integrating some of the new Windows 11 APIs that'll let us have like system translucency and effects that Windows 11 introduced that weren't easily possible in previous versions of Windows. So that kind of thing we're still looking into. But it goes beyond looks, of course. Probably the biggest feature that everyone, especially recently, cares about is biometrics. And Windows Hello, so it's been around for a while, but I never really used it until I got some modern devices that had pretty good biometrics. So now I have a ThinkPad that has both, an excellent fingerprint reader, but also, of course, a Windows Hello webcam. And Both of these just work amazingly with 1Password. We put a lot of work into making sure that the prompt is responsive and reliable and appears when you expect it to. And something that I'm really excited about, and it's not here yet, but we're still working on it, is what we call enhanced Windows Hello. And what that means is, so right now, Windows Hello works great in the new 1Password 8 for Windows. But if you restart your computer or update the app, it's gone because we have to throw out the secret that we keep in memory. But with enhanced Windows Hello, we're actually going to use the TPM chip, the trusted platform model, to securely store your unlock secret. So that way, if you completely quit the app or restart your computer, you'll still be able to use Windows Hello to unlock 1Password. And in that sense, the experience will be very much like Touch ID on Mac. You'll just always be able to use biometrics, which honestly for me will be a life changer because I never want to type in my password once I get used to using biometrics on a computer. So I really can't wait to bring that to Windows. And I also thank Microsoft for doing a good job there of getting people interested in TPMs and making that a requirement of Windows 11, because I know, for some older devices, it's, what's that? Do I have to go buy a new chip? But honestly, it's a great way to have a trusted, secure store on a device, and software like ours can really benefit from it. So really excited to see where that goes and other ways we can integrate into it. Now, there's honestly a ton of lower level ways in which we integrate with the system. And we can go into them if people have questions. There are some that, I don't know, some people might find interesting. Like, we actually use the secure clipboard to make sure that when you copy something to the clipboard, it's not synced over your Microsoft account to the cloud. So that's pretty important when you're copying a password. Things like that. We use the Windows networking stack natively from Rust. So we can have sort of custom support for proxies and for enterprise network configurations. And of course, those are low level. You don't see them, but you do experience them when you use the app. You have just an experience that definitely feels more customized for Windows than you might expect, at least on the surface. Now, actually, one that I know Andrew will be really interested in talking about is we've completely redesigned the way that our browser extension works on Windows to make it more reliable and also to have it communicate with the desktop app in a way that's pretty unique to Windows.
Yeah, for sure. Before I go into that, something you said gave me like a flashback to the early days. And I just pinned a tweet because I had to look it up. And I actually have been using biometrics on Windows since somewhere in like the 2004 to 2005 timeframe. I remember buying the original Microsoft fingerprint reader, hooking that up to my gaming machine. And this was back in the day when I would actually go to people's houses for LAN parties. And I just thought I was the coolest nerd on the block because I could walk away and come back to my machine and unlock Windows XP with this little USB fingerprint reader. And I don't know how I forgot about that, but it's so funny to think we all think of Touch ID from the Mac-centric world as being a really valuable biometric unlock system, but heck, Microsoft's been doing this thing for almost 2 decades now, which is pretty impressive, honestly. Very impressive.
I've just been reminded that I forgot an obvious one. I can't believe I forgot it, but dark mode, of course, full support for the system dark mode in Windows 10 and Windows 11. It'll switch when your computer switches. The browser extension will also switch at the same time. I've gotten so used to this, I consider it such a must-have that it's hard to believe that 1Password didn't have it. I mean, even Windows until a few years ago didn't really have a dark mode, but man, it's just so beautiful on Windows 11 with the accent color and everything. I'm so glad that my whole computer on Windows just has this aesthetic continuity to it that previously I'd honestly associated only with Apple, and now it's great to really feel comfortable on my PC in 1Password and every other app.
Yeah, for sure. I think when dark mode first started becoming a thing, it was kind of a gimmick, right? It was oh, make your app look cool. Nowadays, I pretty much don't use apps that don't support dark mode when I'm laying in bed at night using my laptop when I shouldn't use it or something like that. You know what I mean? And we've hit the tipping point where any app that doesn't support dark mode just doesn't even feel like a modern app. So it is really awesome to see that. And to be honest, I think we kind of nailed a perfect version of dark mode too. You see a lot of apps that are too dark, too light. 1Password is in a really good place there. So I'm very happy with that as well. But you did mention the browser, and I think we've talked about it a lot. We talked about our browser extension on our last Twitter space, which we can dig up a YouTube link. Maybe Nick can dig that up and figure out how to put it into a tweet somehow. But essentially, bringing across 1Password 8 is a big turning point for a lot of what we're doing with the browser extension. So what was formerly known as 1Password X, but the default experience for 1Password is sharing more code than ever in the browser now. So a lot of the same code that we wrote for this Windows app, that we wrote for the Linux app, we actually compile that to WebAssembly from Rust directly and use that within the browser. And that is starting to guarantee that same consistent experience for things like how we compute your time-based one-time password, or how we generate passwords, even in a web app run completely in your web browser. As part of this project, probably one of the largest pieces for my team, and we've been working on this for almost nearly as long as we've been working on the Windows app, was getting an experience that allows our new modern browser extension to talk directly to the app and kind of share lock state and share some state / feature set. So if you click edit in 1Password in your Edge browser, that will actually open the 1Password desktop app if you have it installed. What's almost just as cool, though, is if you don't have the 1Password app installed yet, you can run your entire you can have an entire 1Password experience in the browser. So and this is going to help us with a lot of things that unfortunately people outside of us, longtime users, don't think about. But it's going to help us make 1Password easier to use, right? So when you go sign up for 1Password, oftentimes really all you need is to start with using it in the browser, saving your first set of logins, filling your first set of logins. And then eventually you're going to realize, holy cow, I want to put like my whole digital life in this thing, right? Like, why don't I put more in there? And this will be news to most people on the call, but I actually recently got married while I was on vacation, and I'm feeling this more than ever, right? Like, I'm feeling the need to put, we need to like have a consolidation of all these important documents. We have a kid on the way, and we need to put these documents in the vault. And so essentially, like, you may be able to use just the browser extension, but you're going to shortly become, and one of the things we're going to help you become, is a better 1Password user for your entire digital life. And it starts at the browser. It ends really in the desktop apps and the web app, and sharing items with your family and your teams and those kind of things.
I can't believe I just found out you got married on our Twitter space.
Yeah, I think HR is the only people that know. So,
well, muzzle toes.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is official. We have 2 buyers working at the company, pending all of the legal documents going through, name changes and such.
Wow. Wow, that's a mic drop. Okay.
So anyway,
I know. Just like, by the way, no, congratulations, buyer. That's good job, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. Didn't really, we don't, you can't distract from an upcoming launch with silly personal details. Post-launch, we can talk about cool stuff like that. But I think this is a great point. I do want to leave like a good 15-minute segment for people to come up and ask questions. Oftentimes that sparks long-winded answers and more conversation. Typically, we keep this to about an hour. So we have about 10 minutes. I don't know if you have anything to add, Rue, or should we just start talking about the future of 1Password and where we're going with this?
No, let's dive into that. I got nothing else.
So I think Mitch talked a lot about the Windows Hello and a little bit about how he's using Windows as to like further his developer productivity. But what other kind of hints can we allude to, Mitch, about what, it's always been kind of that kind of, once we get 1Password 8 out, we can start doing X. What is that X, Y, and Z? What can we share? What can we talk about?
So, look, we didn't even get through everything that's in 1Password 8. But just talking about the stuff that's Windows specific can easily take a couple hours, and there's so much more that I think if you open up 1Password 8 and play with it, you'll see kind of where we're going in the future. So a big one that I'm very curious to see how people find it is when you go to create a new item in 1Password 8, you actually get sort of a guided catalog to helping you get data into 1Password. We give you recommendations. You can search. We automatically pre-fill whatever we can. Like we know, for instance, when you type like NE, we'll say, oh, do you want to create a Netflix login? And you just press enter, and it's pre-filled with the title, the URL, tags. We'll even tell you, do you want to maybe share this with your family? And we'll help you do that. And that's kind of a little taste of sort of our vision for what 1Password should be, because we say it should be so much more than a database, so much more than just like an address book. It should actually help you really protect your digital life in a proactive way. And there are little hints of that all over the app. You'll notice when you edit items, we'll start giving you much more frequent suggestions. So when you start typing your username, we'll say, oh, do you want to use like the username that you've used 100 times before? Because why wouldn't you, right? We'll give you tag suggestions. We will give you security question generation when you sign up for a site and you need to answer some security questions. Just little examples like that. And of course, a feature that I'm really excited about both now and in the future is the new quick access. And again, I don't know if you've all had a chance to play with it yet, but on Windows, the shortcut is Control-Shift-Space, although you can change that if you don't like it. And it'll bring up anywhere on your PC a little floating palette, very similar to actually the start menu, where you just type and 1Password will get you what you need. So if you need to fill a login, copy some credentials, it's all keyboard powered. We have a whole set of custom keyboard shortcuts designed for Windows, validated by Windows users. And it's just the beginning. Like, I actually don't even know if it made it into the release build yet. Maybe someone can tell me if it didn't, but it'll start to detect the apps you have open on your system and give you suggestions of the data that you need to use. So if you need to fill your password into Steam, which, I guess for Windows users, I know for me, that's a fairly common task. Like, it'll say you open quick access with a keyboard shortcut, it'll show you Steam right there, and you just press Control-C and you'll have your credentials on the clipboard ready to copy into the Steam app. And we just want to do so many more things like that, where you're not just using 1Password like a spreadsheet. It's helping you live your life and stay secure. And I can already think of others, which I know a lot of people in this call are going to love, and I wish I could talk about them, but not for a while yet.
Yeah, Dave and Rustam have been hinting at something on Twitter, and I'm pretty excited to see what that is. We'll hear about it in the first quarter of next year. One thing that wasn't brought up on this call that may be news to people, and probably one of my favorite recent additions to 1Password, isn't actually really in the app, and that is our new password sharing service. So you can actually, from an item directly in 1Password in Windows now, click the overflow menu and decide you want to share this item with somebody outside of 1Password. And it's a great example of where we essentially had a team build a new feature to the 1Password service, and we can tightly integrate it directly into the desktop app experience. And for a lot of Windows users, most of which probably don't go read our blog posts or maybe even follow us on Twitter, this will be like a new feature that is going to really help them. Because let's be honest, not all of your friends or family use 1Password yet. So this will help you kind of share that Wi-Fi password or add someone to your Plex server or whatever you do. The Wi-Fi is a big one, especially for Windows and Android users. You don't get to experience that tight integration with iOS and macOS where you just get on, open your device near somebody in a house and it just prompts you to share Wi-Fi information. I've personally already used that with a couple of my family members who came and visited me a couple of weeks ago, and it was just awesome. And for those folks, they actually didn't use 1Password, and they were instantly like, "Wow, this is awesome!" They didn't even want 1Password for a password manager. They wanted 1Password to like share information via just a URL. So that's a really cool thing. Nick,
I've actually found that feature even more useful on Windows, because on the Apple ecosystem, I tend to use iMessage for those kinds of things. I paste something to iMessage, but when I'm on my PC or communicating with someone on a PC, we don't have like sort of a source of truth, like a secure way to share information. So if I just need to get a little snippet of text, some kind of code or a link or whatever, and now I just share it from 1Password, and I know that it's going to work for them because it's going to work fine in whatever web browser they have. especially now that that's likely going to be Edge and not Internet Explorer 11. And it's great. It makes my PC feel more connected to the world in a meaningful way, and that's also another focus that we're really going to double down on over the next little while. Like, 1Password is not just something where you have your stuff. It's how you can communicate and share securely in a way you can't really with any other service or app.
Yeah, and I think that's always been one of the selling features to a product like 1Password is, for some people, using a password manager in your browser is enough to get by. And I strongly recommend, if you don't use a dedicated password manager, please do use whatever your browser or OS uses. Like, having secure, uniquely generated passwords is step one. Once you're ready to have that working across every platform, all of your family members, with your friends, that's when 1Password will come in and just dominate and really shine for you. So I think we'll open up, unless Rue, you have anything you want to say, I think we'll open up for some questions real quick.
Let's get some questions rolling in.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, sometimes the Twitter Space app will just crash when you come up on stage. So it takes a few seconds sometimes to get people added. So we have to vamp a little bit. But I will go ahead and bring a couple people up. And David has been patiently waiting. So they are first on the list. If you do want to ask a question, we have a ton of people from the team not even up on stage. Feel free to just hit that little
there we go. Can you hear
button.
Me?
Bottom left-hand side on the iOS app, maybe Android, I don't really know. And you can come up on stage and ask us really anything.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey. There's so much that I wish I could ask these guys, because 1Password has been a profound part of my computing life in a way. So I live in mid-Missouri, and I'm a 27-year-old person who lives and works on computers, who doesn't make software. And I've been using 1Password, I think, since I was 14. I think that's the year. You guys built this industry. Your impact on my life is incredible. I know. I'm sorry. This is like this inevitable preface, but what I'm about to ask you is going to sound out of left field, and maybe even contentious, but it's legitimately in the interest in your interest. Do you guys? Has anyone on your team ever spent any time using NPass for? Because if not, I would advise that you have somebody take a week and just use NPass on iOS and Windows. And also, actually related to 1Password, I've never actually verbalized this word, so you guys can laugh at me if you'd like. The CLI, the command line interface. I was wondering if there are any considerations going to Windows 11. I couldn't find anybody talking about it, so.
Ooh, those are some good questions. So before we go into the CLI, I would love to ask you, what do you love about NPass that you specifically think we should check out? Because I'm curious.
That would be okay, one more thing about my personal history. The most significant thing that I can think of, the actual original thing, is I remember using 1Password for non-password related things before I heard anyone else doing that. Okay, 1Password. I was a 1Password user probably for at least, I don't know, 10 straight years. Not quite. Until 2018. And it's sorry. I have a real problem with condensing stuff. It's NPass is a little bit more intelligent, specifically when okay, I should note I only tried 1Password 8 for 2 seconds before I hopped in here. But as it stands on both iOS and desktop, 1Password has a real issue, and I'm using the Safari extension on iOS, which I really want to use. But it's just it's kind of, maybe I don't have the terminology to describe this. It's a little bit clunky, and like the direction that you guys are taking, I think is inevitable for the industry because like all the like the encryption considerations, um, that stuff. I don't actually know. NPass is hard to like it's not obviously it's not even remotely as well documented. It's kind of obscure in comparison. Um, but it does have, oh, what I was gonna say. Let me stop on this. NPass is what all the reasons that I use 1Password. I used to use 1Password. All the intelligent things, um, the intelligent attributes. NPass is the 1Password for me, at least in my use of today. Um, and I've specifically set aside time. I'm doing a trial of 1Password for the first time. So, um, and my notes are very extensive. But like, I guess the suggestion that someone on the team use NPass is like, I think like ultimately the only way to actually see, since I can't describe better, is like is to extensively use it and use it hardcore. Which I mean I use my password managers hundreds of times a day. Um, I don't know. Did that kind of was that more
Yeah,
specific?
no, I think that's fine. I think that gives us plenty to unpack there. I can tell you this. I'm going to let Ru try to answer the Windows CLI question because that's a good one. But I can tell you one of the really cool things about 1Password in the last couple of years is let me back up even further. About 4.5 years ago, I joined this company, and there was only about 50 of us. And
Yeah.
as of now, about 4.5 years later, I think we have close to 550 or more employees. And every single person we bring in, they are less and less kind of into the product. And we're getting a ton of internal feedback on probably things that you're thinking as well about why does this work this way? It doesn't really make any sense to me. And so that's a kind of a problem, right? When you have internal users saying, why couldn't this be better? Couldn't this, and so those fresh eyes are really widening our eyes from kind of a product design perspective, from an overall interface design perspective, even from a technical developer perspective. So I think one of the things you'll see, and Mitch kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, is you're going to see us really start making some drastic product changes to make 1Password super easy to use for both users like yourself who've been using it for a decade before, and for users that have never used a password manager in their life, right? I think this is definitely a place where we can improve. And it's a place where we want to be industry thought leaders on essentially making a password manager for something that where even Dave, one of our founders of the company, his parents will actually use it, right? Like we don't even have all of our family members using this product because let's be honest, it could be easier. And so I think you will see, and I would love to see you try out 1Password 8, and feel free to follow up with us. My DMs are always open. You can always email us and give us some of those kind of suggestions where you're saying, this part doesn't make any sense to me, because oftentimes it's just we're not looking at it the same way as everybody else. So Windows CLI, Ru, you got an answer on that one?
Yes, we do not comment on rumor or speculation. But so what I will say, I'll answer more generically, is that as more core-based products roll out the door, we're looking at ways that we can interact with other 1Password products that we also produce. So our CLI is certainly something that's near and dear to our hearts, and you can stay tuned to some stuff that's in the works over there.
Thank you so much for the question, David. And seriously, the candor only makes us better. I love how you set us up with like, holy cow, we're going to get like the best feedback from our most faithful user ever. And then you dial us back to reality and let us know, hey, look, we, like every product out there, can get a ton better. And 1Password 8 is really setting that foundation for us to be able to get better. So thank you so much for that. Jeff, welcome, my friend. You got a question, comment for the group? You do have to click the mute button now that you're on stage as well.
There we go. Well, good evening, everyone.
Welcome.
I'm a longtime 1Password user, been a 1Password user on Mac, iOS, and Windows for a really long time, mainly on iOS and Windows now. And I am blind, so I use a screen reader and use a VoiceOver on iOS, which, by the way, the iOS app is extremely accessible, including the Safari extension. So go you. Thank you for that. But the Windows version has been a bit of a journey in reference to accessibility. And right now, the 1Password 7 release is pretty darn accessible. And I have not ventured into 8 yet, just because I'm a little, it's one of these utilities where it's kind of like your text editor, right? You just want it to work. And I'm a little afraid of upgrading and concerned a little bit about the accessibility experience for version 8. So I was wondering if you might be able to speak to it from that standpoint.
So Jeff, first of all, thanks for the question. I have to be, I'm always very candid whenever I talk about our accessibility support, because it is both something that I think we try really hard to do a good job with, and also I don't think that we do a good enough job with. So I'm extremely happy to hear that you've had some successes with our products, and I think that's a result of how hard we're trying. I think we need to do better. We have taken accessibility in mind with 1Password 8 for Windows, and I think, like anything else, we're going to find some spots where we have some improvements to make. I know it's a little bit of an ask to sort of install one Windows app that will uninstall another one, and then if it's not good enough, you're switching back. And there's that aspect of like, look, man, my setup just works. Can you just not screw with it right now? But it's one of those things where feedback from folks like yourself is so incredibly important to help us get it right, that I would love for you to give it a shot and see what you think. I also fully understand if you just want to hang out and wait for a few point releases so we can find those bumps in the road and smooth them out.
I definitely have a machine that I'll get it spun up here on. Have you run accessibility insights across the 1Password 8 app to see how accessible the app is using that tool?
Yes, we have. It is
good.
One of the things that we've done a pass on. But like I said, it's just.
No, I get
I'm
it.
always wary of it, because I just feel like, especially as someone who is not a sightless user myself,
yep.
like I don't want to speak to it because I don't use it that way every day, and so because I'm not dog fooding it, I'm always anxious that like we've totally missed the mark. I don't think that we have, but also I'm nervous that we have.
Okay. And one other question. I feel this is really, really important, and I know support at 1password.com is a good email address to use, but to ensure that things are looked at from this endpoint, is that still the right place to send support requests to? In other words, if I'm going to engage on this, I just want to make sure it's getting to the right people, and that the feedback is heard, and that if you want me to play a role in it, I'm all in. Game on. But I just want to make sure that I'm getting to the right people and making a difference, because I don't want to devote a lot of time to it to help make a win-win if that's not going to. In other words, I just want to make sure I'm getting to the right path. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, of course, that's a fair statement. I just DM'd you my personal email address, so you can just get in touch with me directly, and I'll make sure that it lands in the right places.
Awesome.
I was just gonna say, I guarantee your question has already sparked a to-do item to go revisit some of the things that we added in close to the final hour over the last month for us to go look at. We do have folks internally that rely partially, if not, but not fully, on some of the accessibility features, and so yeah, we'll definitely take another deep dive in there. But I am as someone who worked on the iOS extension, I'm very happy to hear that you've had a pretty good experience there.
Yeah.
Well,
listen, thanks, guys. I don't want to take more of your time, but keep up the great work. It's a great app, and I've got all of my family using it, and vaults everywhere. 1Password all the way. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Anyone else from the room that would like to come up and ask some hard questions or easy questions? I'll take a softball. I think Rue would take a softball at this point. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about 1Password, we are very open. And the reason why we run these spaces is to interface with our community. It's really, some of it is you're getting a different take from the blog post, the fucking amazing blog post that Dave wrote. You're getting to hear kind of our side of things, but also it really is, we do want to hear from the community. That is something that has never changed at 1Password since the day I started using it over a decade and a half ago. And the 5 years that I've worked here, we at all levels listen to user feedback. Developers are in there responding to customers. And so that's why we're here on this Twitter space. So I'm not going to try to pronounce, Sick Codes. What's up? Welcome to the stage. You got a question or comment, concern for the group?
Yeah, sure. How you going? I just had a question. Quite literally just woke up and noticed the stream. I was just looking through this site. Do you have like a community edition? I saw some SDKs on GitHub and things like that. Is there a community edition or somewhere to inspect the code or something like that? But the second question was, or like an encryption white paper. I had a look at it. It was like something about AES. But the second question was, with the command line stuff, correct me if I'm wrong, but would any passwords show up in the history of the command? So the output obviously would come out as like with the passwords, but I assume so. But is there any way that you can prevent, like artifacts from appearing in the history? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack that a little bit at a time. We do have a security white paper. It's fairly large, and it's honestly a pretty good read if you want to hear a lot about how 1Password works. So you can get that on 1Password.com. I want to say / you just click on security, and down at the bottom, you'll be able to download the white paper. I don't remember the URL anymore, and I don't want to give you a bad one. That is
1Password.com. 1Password.com/security.
All right, yeah, I was going to have it. We used to have a short URL for just the white paper. But anyway, that is honestly the same exact document that I read when I first started working here and have revisited on multiple occasions when I was curious about, like, how do this series of keys work, right? Like, how does the muck and vault keys and key derivation and all of these things work at a fairly high level? To answer the community edition question, we do not have that. If you talk to the right founder at the right time, you might hear them say they would love to see it, or let's make 1Password free for the world kind of thing. But we do not have a open source version of the app. That being said, we are very, very open with security researchers. So we obviously run a very comprehensive bug bounty program where people can write in and we can interface with the security community that way. I've even seen, our security people literally email sections of our code base to people interested in how a particular crypto function works or what we're kind of doing behind the scenes. Because in the end of the day, we're not hiding it from the world, what we're doing. We're very open about how we respect people's security and privacy here at 1Password. We just do not have a repository at this time. You may see something in the future. We've talked about open sourcing certain things. And one of the cool things about joining the Rust community is we have started building a ton of the 1Password code base in places where we plan to contribute this back to the community. So more to follow on that. Unfortunately, it's not been the number one priority yet, but it is something that I'm definitely passionate about. And then for the CLI question, I assume you're talking about kind of running it on Windows or Linux, or like running it on like WSL or Linux. I'll probably yield that to Mitch just because I've been talking for a long time and I want to get a taste of water, but maybe he can talk a little bit about how history would work there with regards to passwords and that kind of thing.
So I don't actually use the CLI often enough to have my own workflows, but from what I understand, it's fairly stateless and actually uses for actual secrets, it uses raw input instead of like standout or stand-in. So when you're typing secrets, certainly they won't end up in history, and it does a lot to make sure that that's the case. It also has like you don't pass in your password or anything on the command line. It reads it from a file, and you set your permissions so that it like no process can just casually read it. And our documentation goes into that. And of course the engineers working on that put a great deal of thought into sort of how that all works. I do know, and speaking for the future, this is something we're interested in, is actually having the CLI kind of like how our browser extension communicates with the desktop app. We kind of want them all to be aware of each other's existence and be able to benefit from the security properties of each one. So for instance, the browser extension gets progressively enhanced right now by the desktop app. If you install the desktop app, the browser extension is securely unlocked when you open it. And we're thinking like, well, maybe we can do things like that, for the command line tool or for other parts of our ecosystem. Where using, in the case of Windows, it would use, I think they're called secure pipes. Sorry, I forgot the term. It's whatever Windows uses for IPC. But basically, we could do it in a way where the CLI would benefit even further from some of the security guarantees of the desktop app and have sort of a more stateful, secure presence. And all I can say is that work there is certainly not done, where we don't get these tools out and then leave them and go on to something else. And that's true even for 1Password 8 as a whole. Like the version number is just a version number. It's because it's a new SKU. But you're not going to have to wait till 1Password 9, for instance, to see really radical and interesting changes. In fact, one of the changes in our philosophy is that we want to get out really regular releases with updates, improvements, and features. And honestly, you're going to start seeing that in the space of weeks. And I know that's for the browser extension, and even the CLI has some big plans in the coming year.
Yeah, I guess I could follow up a little bit on the CLI as well. I would be cautious in certain aspects. Like one of the things that the CLI does is it will retrieve an item from the server, decrypt it, and then output the raw JSON of the item. So if you are using a terminal like iTurn2 on macOS, where it has kind of a replay mode where it actually stores values, any input printed out in terminal, that will kind of expose secrets there. So you do have to be mindful of kind of how you use the CLI, but in general, we're not like printing encryption keys or anything like that to your terminal. So there is more of that on our support site, support.1password.com. There's a whole section on the CLI and those kind of things too, to help you out there. And if you have more specific questions, feel free to reach out to us. I actually saw one of our former employees was here who wrote the initial CLI, but I don't see him here. So yeah, thank you for the question. Those were awesome. Thank you for everyone who came up and talked to us. And thank you for the 1Password folks that came out to visit and hear the story. Just like, I think this is our third Twitter space. It's something that we really like to do around major launches, and we really do appreciate seeing the community support. But we're over an hour, which means I really got to go and make dinner for the family. Any closing thoughts there, Mitch or Rue, for the group?
No, this is great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, we did record this, so if you missed part of it, you want to hear the whole thing, we will throw it up on our YouTube channel. I'll tweet it out if you want to follow me, or I wouldn't guarantee the 1Password account will tweet it out. So I will tweet it out when it's up. And yeah, thanks again for everyone coming. And I do really appreciate the community engagement, and super excited for those of you who haven't tried 1Password 8 for Windows to go give it a try. There's never been a better time to use 1Password on Windows. Literally the best experience we've ever made. So please go see it. And thank you. Have a great night, everyone.